and welcome to New Wave Global. You are watching Unraveled, and I'm your host, Marvi Sirmed. It took just 4 days in May 2025 for South Asia to edge terrifyingly close to war. A war triggered not by definitive proof, not by forensic investigation, not even by an international consensus, but by the now familiar cocktail of nationalistic bravado, pre election desperation, and institutional failure, masquerading as strength. India's aggressive missile strikes deep into Pakistan's sovereign territory marked not just a military escalation, but a dangerous new doctrine. Blame now, bomb next, verify never. Let's unpack this with the seriousness it deserves and the skepticism it demands. The Pahalgam terrorist attack of April 22 was horrific. 26 innocent lives were lost, and the perpetrators deserve no sympathy. But what followed next was not a measured search for justice. It was a cynical leap into jingoism. Despite the lack of any smoking gun, no intercepts, no identified Pakistani handlers, no cross border infiltration trails, and no credible link to Islamabad or to any other location in Pakistan, the Indian government and media wasted no time. Within hours, well, strike that, within minutes, the finger was pointed across the border. No deliberations, no nuance, no investigation, nothing, just rage, rhetoric, and drums of war. Let me state once again, clearly and unequivocally, there is no justification ever for terror. The pain of the Pahalgam terror victims' families is immense and deserves not only compassion but justice. Every life lost to political violence, no matter which side of the border, is a life too many. But that very seriousness is what makes India's response even more alarming. Because rather than mourning with responsibility and pursuing accountability with restraint, India jumped the gun almost gleefully, accusing Pakistan before a single shred of credible evidence could be presented. This is not the first time. Following the 2016 Uri attack, and again after the Pulwama terror attack in 2019, India launched what it branded as surgical strikes into Pakistani territory. Strikes whose only proven consequence was a brief spike in television ratings and a prolonged tailspin in diplomacy. In 2019, it even claimed to have destroyed a terrorist training camp in Balakot, though no one outside India saw any evidence of that. The satellite imagery showed little trees and a charred hillside. But on both occasions, Pakistan chose not to escalate. In fact, it even returned an Indian pilot captured after his plane was shot down in what was widely seen as a gesture of de escalation. Let's not forget that in the aftermath of each of these tragedies, the Modi government saw blood in the water and promptly turned it into electoral fuel. But May 2025 was a different beast. This time, India did not stop at the line of control. It carried out air and missile strikes deep into Pakistan's heartland, Punjab, Bahawalpur, Muridke, Rawalpindi, 9 locations in all. The justification? That these locations were connected to terrorist organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. Let's talk about these places. Yes, they were once notorious names, but over the years, the compounds associated with them had evolved, or at least claimed to have evolved, into madrasas and mosques with residential quarters for the families of those administering these facilities. Yes, there is a very real concern that these seminaries might still be nurturing extremism, but India offered no evidence that they were indeed operational terrorist camps. If it had such evidence, it has kept it under lock and key. No one else knows about it. Mr. Modi's government has not shown even a grain of proof to anyone. None. Zero. And yet, India launched what amounts to a preemptive war. It was not counter-terrorism. It was a high-risk domestic political maneuver staged for electoral gains. It's a cruel thing to say, but let me say it. It was a drama stage for electoral gains in the name of national pride. Unfortunately and tragically, Prime Minister Modi's government saw a chance to turn public grief, such immense grief, into populist fuel, distracting voters from a gaping security failure in Kashmir. The objective wasn't just to punish, it was to distract, to deter, to dominate. Distract from government security failure in Kashmir, deter the Pakistani state and reassure a frightened domestic audience, and dominate the electoral narrative in key Indian states by creating the illusion of teaching Pakistan a lesson and offering a manufactured sense of revenge. But here's the twist. While India roars about self defense, it continues to act as a self appointed policeman of the region, violating borders, refusing transparency, and expecting the world to applaud. Unsurprisingly, that applause never came. The international community didn't buy the hype this time. Major powers, including the United States, refrained from backing India's strikes, and Trump, never one to miss a chance for self promotion, took credit for brokering a ceasefire through seemingly unrelated trade deals, much to Delhi's embarrassment. And now, Prime Minister Modi's government is sending parliamentary delegations across the globe, knocking on doors, waving dossiers, and trying to convince the world that bombing a neighbor with no proof was somehow justified. You don't have to be a cynic to see the desperation. It's plain as day. But let's not let Pakistan off the hook either. Of course, the Pakistani state too must be held to account. While Islamabad rightly decried India's aggression, it cannot wash its hands of its past or its present. Yes, Pakistan arrested some of the individuals involved in the 2008 Mumbai attacks following Indian intelligence leads. Yes, it was removed from the FATF grey list, a milestone that signified real effort in countering terror financing. But one cannot ignore the fact that Masood Azhar, the head of Jaish-e-Mohammed, continues to live freely, delivering Friday sermons, inspiring a new generation with the same venom that poisoned the last, and enjoying a stunning level of impunity. Let's not pretend the rot has been fully cleaned. Pakistan's state operators can no longer afford to wink at extremism when it suits its domestic needs. It cannot seek sympathy abroad while tolerating the ideological infrastructure that fuels mistrust. If Pakistan wishes to retain the credibility of being a target of India's aggression, and wants the world to see it as a victim of terrorism rather than a sponsor of it, as India claims, it must stop nurturing, even symbolically, the remnants of its militant Frankenstein. Because any semblance of the tolerance of these groups is not just a political liability, but is a moral abdication, the very specter that gave India a pretext. And yet, we must understand something critical. I want you to pay attention to this one. Most Pakistanis do not view these groups as terrorists because for them, the lens is Kashmir. For more than 7 decades, India has systematically suppressed Kashmiri aspirations, denied them their right to self determination, muzzled their press, banned dissent, and most recently, in 2019, revoked Jammu and Kashmir's autonomous status, making it a union territory governed directly from New Delhi. In the eyes of many Pakistanis, the militant groups are not terrorists. They are, however, problematically resistance fighters standing up to Indian occupation. Now, let me be clear. I do not support these groups. I condemn violence in all forms. We all do it at New Wave Global, whether it is by state or non-state actors. But the Pakistani public's support for these groups does not stem from from love of terror or sympathy for terrorists. It stems from a deeply felt solidarity with what they see as an oppressed people. These militant outfits also maintain, please don't forget, that they also maintain philanthropic wings, schools, hospitals, flood relief, free food, that further solidify their image as righteous defenders of the poor and the voiceless. This is not an endorsement of their methods, but this is indeed an explanation of why Pakistanis view them the way they do. The old adage that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter is not just an abstract cliche. It is a lived emotional and historical truth in South Asia, and especially between Pakistan and India. And India, it has now learned that its narrative fatigue is real. Despite its loud efforts to frame Pakistan as a terror sponsoring state, the world is no longer buying it. India's attempt to dehyphenate itself from Pakistan to be seen as a global power in its own right, with Pakistan as a regional irritant, has, has come undone. The May 2025 strikes rehyphenated India and Pakistan in the worst way. Instead of terrorism, the global conversation has shifted back to Kashmir. Even President Donald Trump, with his characteristic opportunism, has reinserted himself into the crisis by offering, no, insisting on mediation, much to India's horror. This is the same India that has always insisted Kashmir is its internal matter and that any talks with Pakistan must be strictly bilateral. That narrative too is now in tatters. India's post conflict diplomatic scramble, dispatching delegations to world capitals, was not a show of strength, it was a PR cleanup. An admission that the story it tried to tell the world had backfired. So, where does that leave us? The ceasefire, while holding, is fragile. Kashmir remains unresolved. Mutual hostility continues to simmer. And once again, we find ourselves on a familiar ledge, waiting for the next spark, the next miscalculation, the next tragedy, God forbid. Both publics are being manipulated, both militaries are being fed, and both governments are winning short term battles while peace continues to lose every war, every battle. So we can't afford to be passive observers. It's time we ask uncomfortable questions, and it's time the region demands answers from both the governments, for both the people. For Indian citizens, you must ask, why does your government leap to war before exhausting diplomacy? You must think, why is Kashmir's pain weaponized for electoral dividends? Why are the real questions about internal security failures buried under the slogans of revenge? And for Pakistani citizens, why do we and our government tolerate men like Masood Azhar, Hafiz Saeed, and scores of their lieutenants? Why? Why does our state still maintain selective amnesia about violent non-state actors? Why do we allow empathy for Kashmiris to be hijacked by those who glorify militancy and those who kill innocent people? And for all of us in South Asia, when will we stop letting hypernationalism and xenophobia drown out our shared civilizational heritage, our culture, our history, and above all, our shared problems? When will we recognize that every escalation only fuels more suffering, not solutions? Never, never solutions. These are not, this is not cliche. These are not rhetoric questions. These are the urgent questions of our time, because in the fog of war, someone has to insist on clarity. So stay with us. This is Unraveled, where we don't settle for easy narratives, because in this region, peace isn't just a dream, it's a responsibility, a shared responsibility of me and you. Have a good one.